And each one of those pillars is vital to improve this thing called biological age.
Yes.
And at the top of the list is that thing we call nutrition. Nutrition. As Hippocrates said, food is medicine, medicine is food, and let food be thy medicine.
Picture a guy sitting in a chair that's in his 80s with a blanket on. You walk in the room and you notice the thermostat sitting at 78. You're sweating, but he's cold. What's the riddle, Batman? Well, the thing is, he's got a hypothyroid condition.
I don't know how many of you have ever seen the old classic Christmas story, It's a Wonderful Life, right? But in that movie, there was a run on the banks, right? And it's like, oh my word, nobody had any cash. Well, this actually is happening in real life, and it won't be a wonderful life, right?
We're all aging. We can't stop it. How do we age more gracefully?
That's the question of the day, isn't it? Now, I think people need to first understand there's two ways to measure aging. One is your chronological age, which is really, it's all about
How many
time,
birthdays?
birthdays, calendar days. That's one way. Okay, great. But really, if you think about it, that has nothing to do with the real pattern of how you truly should measure age, which is your biological aging process. Which is really how well is your system aging. For example, I tell people this, you're always going to see this difference. And think back, everybody listening right now, when you go to your 20-year high school reunion, right? You're going to see people there you're going to go, hey, Michelle, my gosh, what happened to them? They look so old, right? Same class, but you're going to see people there and you're going to go, oh my goodness, they haven't aged a bit. Well, that's the difference between the biological aging process. Life can affect people differently, and we have to begin to do things that we'll talk about in a minute to elongate or bring about a healthier biological aging process, because we cannot change chronological age.
Well, in the clinic, we talk about the 7 pillars of health, and each one of those pillars is vital to improve this thing called biological age.
Yes.
And at the top of the list is that thing we call nutrition. As Hippocrates said, food is medicine, medicine is food, and let food be thy medicine. And where's the most important medical decision that you make every single day? It's at the end of your fork.
It's fork curls.
Fork curls.
Fork curls. Yeah. Important nutrition is like people neglect the power of nutrition. It is number one. Hippocrates said it was number one. God said it was number one. It's number one. And it's not a number 1A. It's one all by itself.
So if we want this skin bag or this dirt suit to age in a better biological manner, we have to pay attention to what's at the end of our fork and make sure it's nutrient dense, good, clean, healthy food.
We do. And before we even go to number 2, I think people need to know this. We know the standard American diet kills.
It's sad.
It's sad.
Standard American
SAD,
diet is sad.
But here's the thing. We have this saying that goes like this. You can't pill away. You can't hormone away. You can't pray away. You can't exercise away. You can't supplement away the effects of a chronically chosen standard American diet intake. Can't do it. And so people are profiting off of America's naivety with that. And instead of like America getting healthy, America's becoming victims of these people, unscrupulous people that are saying, well, you take this pill for fat loss, or you take this drug for fat loss, or this.
The quick fix.
It's just not right, and it's ripping people off.
Well, it's just the quick fix. We have found through time that it doesn't work. We have to
No.
create behavioral change, do things differently, and make it long-lasting change so the body composition lasts.
It does. So nutrition's number one. Number two?
Exercise. We got to
Yeah.
move more, sit less. And we know in today's society, sitting is the new smoking. Boy, we sit, we don't get blood oxygen and nutrients to our tissues, so therefore we become toxic. We become posturally malaligned or dysfunctional.
Yep.
You know, chronic back pain, knee pain, neck pain, just from sitting because we're not circulating. And we've got to work on exercise.
People statistically are 5 times more likely to become sick with our common diseases if they do not exert regular exercise patterns. Crazy.
And studies have shown just 30 minutes a day can improve that thing called biological age. So it can turn back the hands of Father Time so you have more quality in your years than life.
All right. So nutrition, exercise.
Sleep.
Well, of course, we need 7 to 8 hours, don't we? Make it happen, right? Let's make that happen.
Well, if we don't get adequate sleep, we're not recovering, we're not waking up refreshed, we're not regenerating, we're not processing the things that happened the day before. So sleep is vital for longevity.
What's number 4?
Number 4 is going to be
Stress management.
stress
right?
management.
Stress stresses me out. I don't like the panic, fast pace, all that mess that we live in America. I just repel from that. I don't want to be around it because stress creates chronic fear, which will create chronic, stress hormones, which will cause you to gain weight and miss your sleep. Right. So we've got to learn to manage stress. We need to do a whole segment on that sometime.
We do. So those 4 things, those are things that we actually have direct control over. Everybody has 1,440 minutes in a day that we can calendar and do something about. The other things are like the things that you don't necessarily have direct control over, but if you know about them, you can make the adequate changes. And one of those is DNA.
Yeah.
Deoxyribonucleic acid, you get 23 chromosomes from mom and 23 from dad. And if we understand our genes or genetics, those actionable genes, we can actually make good, substantial change in the correct direction and not have to succumb to heart disease or oxidative stress, which can lead to cancer, or methylation issues, which can lead to depression and anxiety.
Yeah. And then number 6 is going to be, hormones. We've got to think about that one. And then obviously 7, it's like the same kind of concept as peptides. The bottom line is those 7 things are things that we do and really analyze with every single person, don't we? Every single person goes through that process. And we have this overriding theme of emotional and spiritual health. We don't forget those, but those are our 7 pillars.
Yes. And each one is not just independent, they're all interdependent to create the best biological aging process.
That's right. And if you don't put attention to and you don't do something intentionally with all these processes as the interdependence works, we're missing like a spoke on a wheel. If we miss a spoke on a wheel, that wheel eventually will become more weak. So we need to really think about it, folks, and really put ourselves in a position to optimize our biological aging process. If you want to age gracefully like her, you need to reach out to us at Sherwood.tv or give us a call.
This pesky thing called thyroid disease. What are the common symptoms and how do you treat it?
It can be really confusing, but we're going to unravel that for you coming up next.
I could use your assistance.
Okay,
Jesus. Huh? My name is Jesus.
Sure. Jesus.
Jesus is here today.
You looking for a job?
Yes, sir.
You and Mark have 45 days before the bank forecloses.
Not to worry. They do not call me by God Byron for nothing. The collection plate starts to be passed around. Mark reaches into the basket and shouts, "You and your family are the winner from the first church of the lotto." Kind of think of it like a high-stakes bingo night every Sunday.
Poopy diaper!
Poopy diaper!
This video of the diaper going viral right before our eyes.
This is a miracle.
What is?
Friends of Faith has over 300,000 followers.
Oh my dad! That's more followers than Moses had. Jesus! Take the wheel! No, stop take the wheel! I got it, buddy.
And when you navigate through these economies with people, here's what happens. We want to hold their hand through it, let them know when it's time to buy, sell, reallocate, get out of Dodge. Because a lot of times when you're struck with fear, fear does two things. Number one, it can paralyze, and people just put their head in the sand and say, I'm just going to forget about it and hopefully it gets better. Or it causes you to make a wrong decision. And this is why we are here, is to help people navigate through the political quagmire nonsense that's going on, the economic malaise, and the absolute collapse that we're seeing. And when our freedoms are eroding, our political freedoms, our economic freedoms, our personal freedoms, our religious freedoms, our health freedoms, they're all tied together. But you know what doesn't need to erode with that? Our finances.
KirkElliottPhD.com/Sherwood.
Let's shine the spotlight on one of our star supplements.
The human body can make most of the types of fats it needs from other fats or raw materials, but not omega-3 fatty acids, also called omega-3 fats or N3 fats.
These are essential fats that the body must get from food.
Biomega 1000 provides a potent dose of omega-3 essential fatty acids sourced from a strategically placed fishing facility in the far South Pacific Ocean off the coast of Chile.
Each capsule delivers an impressive 1,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA, and the capsules also contain vitamin E. See the link below for a special offer, and remember, don't be fooled by cheap online knockoffs. We're seeing more and more people have this thing called hypothyroidism, or have the need to have thyroid prescription medication. Well, let's talk a little bit about what is the thyroid in the first place.
Well, the thyroid is a little pair of glands that sit kind of right in here, there on the side of the throat area, and the brain actually signals from the pituitary to the, or hypothalamus to the pituitary to the thyroid to say, hey guys, produce. Thyroid, as a general rule, controls metabolism, heart rate, and body temperature, and it has a lot to do with the immune system. It's important, right? But people today are really into that, or commonly falling into that trap of hypo or low thyroid function. Why?
Well, a lot of that comes from this thing called leaky gut, where the digestive system gets barraged from the standard American diet, and all of a sudden large proteins are now getting into the system that shouldn't be, and the body creates antibodies, and then these antibodies essentially attack the thyroid and slowly through time lower thyroid function. So people start having things like difficulty in thinking. They start feeling depressed or blue. Their speech becomes impaired. They start putting on lots and lots of weight. They have low energy. They may even have muscle weakness. And a common symptom is constipation. They don't move their bowels like they should. Their hair becomes brittle and their nails become weak. And that's all related back to the thyroid, and it could also be related back to the gut and the inability to absorb the right nutrients.
And they're also cold all the time, too.
Yes.
Really hypersensitivity to cold. You know, it's like everybody that's probably listening right now can imagine this. Picture a guy sitting in a chair that's in his 80s with a blanket on. You walk in the room and you notice the thermostat sitting at 78. You're sweating, but he's cold. What's the riddle, Batman? Well, the thing is, he's got a hypothyroid condition and nobody deals with it. I was on national TV the other evening, and it was talking about the obesity crisis and all this stuff. And I was asked the question, do we and should we be blaming thyroid for the obesity crisis? And actually, it's the other way around. You mentioned leaky gut, which I think was brilliant. So leaky gut is going to create fat gain as well around the midsection. Well, the fat actually creates a hormone called leptin, which is supposed to go to the brain and kind of tell the brain that, hey, we've got excess fuel here. And that's supposed to translate to the thyroid to say, thyroid, turn up the metabolism. That's why when we're younger, we can pretty much see that system cranking our energy level and our metabolism so fast you can't gain weight. But in this case, you're gaining weight so fast, the body gets overwhelmed. And instead of the brain hearing, I have sufficient fuel, the brain hears instead, I've got no fuel, because we become leptin resistant. And that in turn communicates to the thyroid that we've got no fuel. So therefore, we've got to turn everything down. So actually it is gaining weight precipitates most time the lower thyroid function, which precipitates more weight gain, which precipitates more thyroid dysfunction.
Yes, and patients will come and say, well, I want my thyroid tested, and we'll run a full battery of testing, and those tests include the TSH.
Yep.
Oftentimes people get the labs mixed up. They think if TSH is low, their thyroid is low.
Right.
Well, when we're talking about thyroid labs, it's an inverse relationship. The TSH should be towards the low end of the range, and then the T4, which is like this inactive storage pool, should be at the high end of range, as well as the T3. So T4 loses an iodine and it becomes T3, the active metabolic hormone. Now, inside the cells, we really can't measure what's going on inside the cells. No. There are some people that need a little bit more active T3 passing past those receptors to get inside the cell to do metabolic work. So that's why sometimes just a simple T4 medication isn't the be-all, end-all for all people.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it right there, because people need to know that if you're going to check your thyroid and be complete, TSH, T4, T3, you might want to check a reverse T3, which is something that kind of goes up when there's a lot of stress. And certainly you want to test the 2 thyroid antibodies. But you said something key there, and we're not anti-T4 medications. Those would be things like, people have heard of like levothyroxine, Synthroid. Those are T4s that actually convert to T3s. But sometimes they don't convert, do they?
That's correct. Each person has an ability through the deiodinases, which are enzymes that take that iodine component off of a T4 to make it T3. They're genetically weak in the production of that enzyme. So therefore, they can't make the active T3, and they need to be supported a little bit more than the person who can deiodinate in the appropriate manner and get that active free T3 pool that they need to do the metabolic work.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this, you're thinking, those terms are like crazy. Just know that most labs have an average T3, free T3 score of about 2.0 to 4.4. You want to be somewhere on the higher end of that. Probably middle 3s would be a good place to be. TSH somewhere between 0.75 and probably 1.5 is a good general range. But the bottom line is hypothyroidism is super common today, isn't it?
It is super common. And before we go to medication, we're always going to clean a person's diet up. We're always going to help them heal that leaky gut. And we're always going to give them the nutrients that the thyroid needs to function better. Those are things like L-tyrosine. That's going to be iodine. That's going to be zinc. That's going to be selenium. And the components that help the thyroid make active thyroid hormone.
So there you go. You don't have to deal with hypothyroidism. Even though you're listening right now, you might be. Very common. But understand the dynamics of it, understand what causes it, and test the right labs and do the right things. It can be very complex. So if you need help with that, need some instruction with that, reach out to us. We'll be glad and honored to help you. You can go to Sherwood.tv or just give us a call. Up next, our financial guru, Kirk Elliott, gives us advice on what you need to know at this time in history.
Hey friends, you already know the answer to this, but we'll ask you anyway. If you stay away from your favorite junk food for a month and then go back to supersizing it, will your health improve?
Well, that's the thing about change. To change, we have to be as consistent as possible.
And when we go back to an old habit, it's not the end of the world. We just get back at the new habit.
Before you know it, real transformation is evident to you and others.
That's why we offer a bunch of helpful bonuses when you subscribe to Kingdom Fuel.
Kingdom Fuel is our complete nutritional meal shake.
It's the simple start to a transformed life, and we'll auto ship every month so you don't run out.
You'll receive 2 free shaker cups, free access to our video courses, and a monthly call with us filled with practical inspiration.
Just see the link below or on your screen and subscribe today.
Hey there, Kevin Sorbo here. Now, deep down, we know this. We're more than just a brain and a body. We're a spirit, we're a soul, and we're also a physical temple. If you hit the wall when you're trying to improve one aspect of your being, it's probably because, well, other aspects are sabotaging our success. So that's why diets don't work. And frankly, why so much conventional wisdom from our so-called medical establishments falls flat. Doctors Michele and Mark Sherwood have a very different approach. I should know because I happen to be one of their patients. They address the whole person to get to know you, your challenges, and more importantly, what your goals are. Then they offer a complete plan that addresses your unique biology and your heart. They'll help you discover what you need to experience transformation. So find out more at sherwood.tv/sorbo. That's sherwood.tv/sorbo, or see the link before. Now I'm heading for a workout. You should be going for a workout too. All right, guys. God bless.
Hey everybody, Dr. Kirk Elliott here, and thanks Mark for having me on. Interesting topic today because it's a scary topic for everybody that has funds in the bank, right? So I don't know how many of you have ever seen the old classic Christmas story, It's a Wonderful Life, right? But in that movie, there was a run on the banks, right? And it's like, oh my word, nobody had any cash. Well, this actually is happening in real life, and it won't be a wonderful life, right? So the FDIC, the Federal Depository Insurance Corp, right? When you have a bank account, a checking account, savings account, your bank accounts are what? They're insured up to $250,000, right? So we all feel safe, right? We all feel safe that our bank accounts should be safe, right? They're not tied to the stock market. They're not tied to the bond market, or are they, right? Because what does the bank do with your funds? They lend it out, right? So they used to be that every $100 you would deposit, they would keep $10 back and they would loan out $90, right? So it was a 10% reserve requirement. Well, during COVID, the banks, all banks in America from the Federal Reserve said reserve requirement is 0. So they don't have to keep any money on hand at all, 0, right? Oh my word, they could be ripe for a bank run, right? So they also did one other thing. This happened last year. Also what happened last year was the Fed took $2.5 trillion of liquidity out of the banking system via a mechanism called a reverse repo mechanism, which just means they gave all banks these worthless US treasuries and stripped cash out. So they took out $2.5 trillion. They made a 0% reserve requirement, meaning banks don't have anything on hand. So their liquidity is like minimal. But then in November of 2022, a meeting was held at the FDIC, and this video just came out this end of the first week in January. It was a video of their meeting. It wasn't intended for public consumption because these FDIC officials were talking, and what were they saying? We can't let the public know about this at all. Now, the bankers, they need to know what's happening in the markets and the impending collapse. And see, Mark, words have meaning, right? So impending collapse, they weren't talking about a collapse that might happen somewhere down the road, an impending collapse of the markets, and the public can't know about what they're talking about in this meeting because that would have come with unintended consequences. It's like, what in the world were they talking about? So what they're talking about is the FDIC is running out of money. So we all think we have $250,000 insurance coverage. We don't, because there's $9 trillion of our money in the banking system, $9 trillion, okay? They have 125 billion covering 9 trillion. That's 1.388%. So the FDIC only has 1.388% of all of our deposits covered. No wonder the FDIC officials, when they didn't know they were being recorded, said, we can't let the public know about this because it would come with unintended consequences, which would be what? A run on the banks. And how much money do banks have? 0% reserve requirement. And they stripped 2.5 trillion out. So this is where, what do we do? I mean, seriously, what do we do when our banks aren't even safe? And you and I have spoken in the past, Mark, about stock market collapse, bond market collapse, and a lot of times people just put their money in the banks when they want it safe and they just want to sit on the sideline. That's not even a good option now, right? With the banking system in complete shambles, no liquidity, and now FDIC, the insurance coverage is so underfunded, they only cover 1.388%. So what do? What you and I have been talking about for months now. Go into tangible assets like gold and silver. It's your safe haven. It's the flight for quality that we all need in times like this, because here's the growth that we've seen. Asset protection, first and foremost. We need to protect everything we've worked so hard to accumulate. Silver and gold are the safest assets in the planet because they're things, and things go up with inflation. But over the last 13 weeks, silver's up almost 40%. It was, let's see, 3 months ago, so, 12, 13 weeks, it was $17.97 an ounce. Today, it's well over 24. It's up almost 40%. But 12 weeks doesn't make a trend. So let's look back further. 2.5 years. Silver was $11.91 an ounce in March of 2020. Now it's up to over 24. That's up 98% in 2.5 years, averaging 38% year growth. That is amazing. In a time like this, when we're all concerned about stock markets collapsing, bond markets collapsing, we're losing equity in our houses, we can have a smile on our face like I always do because we can have something good. There's hope and there's light at the end of this tunnel. If you do the right thing, reallocate into silver or gold, tangible silver or gold, and we can help you with that.